So for example 1 here, we have y is equal to x squared minus 4x plus 1. So we're going to list out a, b, and c. A is equal to 1, b is equal to -4, and c is equal to +1. To figure out the x value for our vertex, we need to use x is equal to -b over 2a. So once we plug our numbers in here, we're going to end up with +4 over 2 times 1. Remember, whatever your b value is, when you plug it into your equation for your vertex, all you do is you flip the sign. So I went from -4 and just made it +4 there. So we now have 4 over 2 times 1, which becomes 4 over 2. 4 over 2, we end up with x is equal to 2. So now when we set up our chart here, I'm going to start out at 2, and I'm going to choose 2 spots to the right and to the left of it. So you can just count out on your number line, go 4, 3, 2, 1, and 0. So when I take 2 and I plug it into my equation, I get y is equal to 2 squared minus 4 times 2 plus 1. So 2 squared, we get 4 minus 8 plus 1, end up with -3 there. So when x is 2, y is -3. So we go over to 2 and then down to -3, plot our point right there. Now let's try out our other x values. So let's try y is equal to, or x is equal to 1. So when we do that, we get y is equal to 1 squared minus 4 times 1 plus 1. End up with 1 minus 4 plus 1. End up with -2 there. So when x is 1, y is -2. Going to try erasing this, but I guess the eraser here just is not very good. So when x is 1, y is -2 there. And that also means because it is symmetric, because we're going the same distance to the left and to the right of our vertex, x is 1. When x is 1, y is -2. That's the same thing when x is 3, y is -2 as well. Now, when I take 0 and plug it in, I get y is equal to 0 squared minus 4 times 0 plus 1. So both of those zeros get canceled out. I get y is equal to 1. So when x is 0, y is 1. Same thing when x is 4, y is also 1. So just plug in my points there and connect my dots. And that's it for example 1. So for number 2 here, we have x squared plus 5x minus 2 for our equation. Again, we're going to list out a is equal to 1, b is equal to 5, c is equal to -2. So our vertex is going to be x is equal to -5 all over 2 times 1. And we get -5 over 2, or -2 and 1/2, or -2.5. All mean the same thing. Now, when we set up our xy chart here, we go -2.5, and to the left, we can go to -3 and -4, and then to the right, we go -2, -1. So once we set up our xy chart, we then look to plug in our x values into our equation. So we're going to go with -2.5 first to figure out your vertex or your starting point for your parabola. So for this, I'm going to go with -5/2 because I think it's easier to plug into our equation and do by hand. If you choose to use a calculator, I'd say go with decimals because in a calculator, decimals tend to be easier. So here, -5/2 squared. Remember, it's -5 times -5. -5 times -5 all over 2 times 2. So we get 25/4. Here, this is 5/1 times -5/2. So it's 5 times -5 all over 1 times 2. So that ends up becoming -25/2 and then -2 here. So we want a common denominator for all of these. We're going to go with a common denominator of 4. Now here, I'm going to multiply the top and bottom of 2/1 by 4 to get 8/4. For 25, I'm going to multiply the top and bottom by 2 to get 50/4, and then 25/4 just stays the same. So here, we have 25 minus 50, -25, minus 8 is -33/4. -33/4. That simplifies to 8, -8 and 1/4. So our x value here, when x is -2.5, our y value, is -8 and 1/4. So once we get -8 and 1/4 for our vertex, go over to -2.5 and go down to 8 1/4. So right about there. Now, I chose a half a step to my right and to my left to go with -2 and -3. So let's plug those values in. So we get -2 squared plus 5 times -2 minus 2. So we get 4 minus 10 minus 2, end up with -8. So when x equals -2, we get -8. And now let's plug -1 in. So we get -1 squared plus 5 times -1 minus 2. End up with +1 minus 5 minus 2. And we get -6 there. So when we plot our points, so when you connect your dots, this is what your graph will look like here for example 2. Now let's take a look at example 3. So here for example 2, we have an equation in vertex form. We have y is equal to -2 times x plus 1, the quantity squared, plus 3. So remember, in vertex form, we take whatever number is inside our parentheses, x plus 1, and you take the opposite sign of that for your vertex. So our vertex is going to be -1, and then your y value is going to be +3. So we get a vertex of -1, 3 for your starting point. Go over to -1 and up to 3. And then I just set up my XY chart here. So I'll choose -3, -2, -1, 0, and +1. So let's take +1 and plug it in here. We get y is equal to -2 times 1 plus 1 squared plus 3. Remember, we're following PEMDAS here. So we add 1 and 1 together first to get 2, then do 2 squared, which is 4. So we have -2 times 4 plus 3, -8 plus 3 to get -5. So when we plug this in, we get a value of -5 for 1 there, -1 again, that is 3, and now since 1 is -5, -3 is also -5. Now let's take 0 and plug it in. See what we get. So we get y. Sorry about that. So now that we have x is 1, and now that we've solved for x equals 1, you got negative 5. Let's try x equals 0. So we're going to take 0 and plug it in. We get negative 2 times 0 plus 1 squared plus 3. It becomes negative 2 times 1 plus 3. 0 plus 1 is just going to be 1. 1 squared is just 1. So negative 2 times 1 plus 3 is our next line there. So you get negative 2 plus 3, and that is equal to positive 1 for your y value. So when we plot our points, go over to positive 1, down to negative 5. We end up with 0 and positive 1, and then the mirror image of that on the other side. So now we connect our dots, and that is what your graph will look like. Now that we've solved for x equals 1, you got negative 5. Let's try x equals 0. So we're going to take 0 and plug it in. We get negative 2 times 0 plus 1 squared plus 3. It becomes negative 2 times 1 plus 3. 0 plus 1 is just going to be 1. 1 squared is just 1. So negative 2 times 1 plus 3 is our next line there. So you get negative 2 plus 3, and that is equal to positive 1 for your y value. So when we plot our points, go over to positive 1, down to negative 5. We end up with 0 and positive 1, and then the mirror image of that on the other side. So now we connect our dots, and that is what your graph will look like.